Brooklyn's morning light filtered through the environmentally glazed windows of Amanda's latest project, a revitalized community library now wrapped in sun-drenched cedar and climbing ivy. She stood back from the structure, coffee in hand, boots dusted with gravel, watching as curious children peered through the new reading nooks carved into green walls. This was her cathedral. No marble, no press photographers, just transformation rooted in purpose. While the world had pivoted toward smart design, Amanda had been quietly integrating soul into steel and glass for over a decade. Not with bombast or billboards, but with intentionality. Every building she touched didn't just function, it breathed hope. This latest project, nestled deep in a neighborhood often skipped by glossy architecture magazines, epitomized why she chose this path in the first place. She thought of her grandmother, who used to say, "Plant good so deep even the concrete can't choke it." The Wellington Commission had shifted things, yes, calls, emails, mentions in trade journals, but what hadn't changed was Amanda's compass. She still insisted on locally sourced materials, on listening to community voices louder than client boardrooms. Her firm's mission remained intact, and her team, just as passionate as ever, gave everything to every blueprint. But something intangible had shifted within Amanda since the wedding. Where once there was a quiet ache for affirmation, now bloomed a calm clarity. Her value wasn't something to be earned through grand gestures or grudging praises, it simply was. Her buildings whispered that to anyone willing to pause and listen. And in those panes of recycled glass and pockets of rooftop gardens, Amanda left echoes, not of revenge, but legacy. Not as the underestimated sister, but as the woman who built things that stood, gently defiant, in the loud shadow of skyscrapers. Amanda had always known where she stood in the Russell family. Not by speech, but by silence. Her success, defined by impact and principle, was a language her family never bothered to learn. At Sunday dinners, mentions of award-winning design innovations drew polite smiles, swiftly redirected toward Michael's latest market triumphs. Her mother once told her, "We're just so proud that you're doing something you love," the same tone one reserved for preschool finger painting. The wedding weekend crystallized what Amanda had felt her entire adulthood. In the Russell household, worth equaled status, and status spoke in dollar signs. She could build eco-conscious schools for underserved neighborhoods, but if her name wasn't in Forbes or on a flashy LinkedIn post, it faded like wallpaper behind Michael's booming resume. That night, seated 2 tables away from her own parents, Amanda understood her place wasn't just random, it was symbolic. And when Michael's toast delivered that cutting line, dressed in humor, varnished with sibling charm, he held up a mirror not only to Amanda, but to the unspoken and truths their family operated on. It wasn't the jab itself that stung most, it was seeing her parents chuckle lightly, not in cruelty, but in agreement. She didn't belong in their hierarchy, and deep down, she never wanted to. But longing for their pride was a ghost she'd never stopped chasing. As she stared at her reflection in the gilded reception hall mirror, bridesmaid satin catching the light just right, Amanda saw past the dress, the glances, the forced smiles. She saw a woman who had worked tirelessly to shape city skylines with meaning, and whose value could not be defined by the ones too blind to see it. The Russell family mirror didn't show truth, it distorted it. But that night, Amanda chose to see herself clearly for the first time. And what she saw was magnificent. Amanda stepped out of the rideshare and into a different world. The hotel lobby shimmered with crystal chandeliers and towering floral arrangements, roses and orchids imported from across continents. Glancing at the white-gloved doorman who greeted her like she didn't quite belong, Amanda adjusted the garment bag over her shoulder and took a breath. This weekend wasn't about comfort. It was about survival. The Russell family had spared no expense. The rehearsal dinner was a full-plated affair at the Baccarat Hotel, its mirrored walls reflecting every raised brow and backhanded compliment. Amanda's arrival earned her a once-over from Stephanie's cousin and a lukewarm hi. "You look so comfortable." Her dress, sleek and minimal, contrasted the sea of designer threads and statement jewelry. She smiled anyway. She knew who she was. Stephanie swept in later, air-kissing guests and directing staff like a polished diplomat. Amanda! "Oh my gosh, doll, we need to lock down the place cards. You're at table 19. Not close to the couple, but trust me, it's quieter." Amanda nodded, swallowing the sting. Reassigned like a misplaced sticker. Back in her room, Amanda unzipped the bridesmaid gown for tomorrow, royal blue silk with high slits that defied her modest taste. She hadn't chosen it, Stephanie had. And when Amanda offered design alternatives that would better match the venue's architecture, Stephanie had offered a smile so sweet it curdled. That's cute, but let the professionals handle the aesthetics, okay? As she stared at the dress draped across the bed, Amanda felt old ghosts awakening, memories of school recitals skipped, awards dismissed, a quiet ambition often laughed off. She brushed her hand over the fabric. This weekend, she wouldn't beg for belonging. She zipped the gown back into its bag and looked in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, tired, poised, and ready. Whatever this weekend held, Amanda decided she'd rise, not recoil. Even if she had to do it alone, each clinking of champagne glasses harmonized with the laughter resonating off the ballroom walls. Amanda stood near the edge of the crowd, watching her brother Michael sway slightly as he clutched the mic. Too. Zito crisp, confidence sharper than the crystal chandelier above him. To love, to loyalty, and to legacy, he began, pausing for timed applause. And speaking of legacy, some of you know my baby sister Amanda. She's been, well, following her passion for the last decade. Amanda's smile froze. Michael's grin widened with the ease of someone performing. Proof, he said, raising his glass higher, that you don't always have to be successful to be proud of your work. Scattered laughter rippled through the room. Amanda caught it all, the smirks behind champagne flutes, the sympathetic wince on her father's face thinly concealed by amusement. Even her mother chuckled, as if it were some endearing family joke. Pain rose like heat behind Amanda's eyes, but she refused to blink. A toast, meant to honor unity and love, had become a stage for Michael's public performance of superiority. He hadn't just mocked her job. He had belittled everything she'd worked so fiercely for. Sleepless nights drafting proposals, the joy of seeing neglected neighborhoods revamped, the lives touched by sustainable spaces. This wasn't a jab, it was a rupture. Amanda let out a silent breath, clutching the edges of her satin dress, not for glamour, but for grounding. She caught her own reflection in the window, bright eyes shadowed by disbelief, her expression unreadable yet resolute. She excused herself quietly, weaving through laughter and clinking glasses, heart pounding with conflicting urges, escape or endurance. As the ballroom doors closed behind her, Amanda stepped into the marble stillness of the hallway. She wasn't going to cry. Yet, the words had burned, yes. But so had they etched something else into her spine. Resolved, Amanda gripped the edge of the marble sink, staring into her reflection beneath the glimmering chandelier light. Her lipstick, once perfectly applied, now smudged just slightly at the corners. Nothing dramatic, just enough to betray the weight pressing behind her eyes. Laughter from the ballroom still echoed in her ears, the sound of clinking glasses and half-hearted applause mixing with the sting of her brother's words. Proof that you don't always have to be successful to be proud of your work. The phrase played on repeat, rehearsed and cruel in its precision. She blinked back the tears threatening to betray her composure. It was supposed to be his happiest day. She had dressed in the ridiculous lavender gown, worn the string of pearls their mother insisted she borrow, smiled through Stephanie's passive jabs about artsy types, and posed politely in every photo. She hadn't expected a thank you, but public humiliation? Amanda exhaled slowly, taking a tissue from her clutch and dabbing her lips. Leaning forward, she whispered to herself, "You've built structures that touched lives. You've helped communities breathe again. You matter despite what they think." Her voice trembled, but her message landed. She looked at her reflection not just as a woman scorned, but as a force yet to be reckoned with. Walking out would mean giving in. Staying gracefully, purposefully, meant reclaiming her narrative. Her heels clicked softly against the tiled floor as she adjusted her posture, gently fixed her hair, and reapplied her lipstick with a steadier hand. Tonight would no longer belong to the man who had mocked her or the family that had underestimated her. It would belong to her. She wouldn't seek drama, just dignity. And with it, the kind of silent power that makes everyone else suddenly notice what they chose to ignore. Amanda stared at her reflection in the gilded mirror of the ballroom's powder room, the fluorescent lights catching in the shimmer of her eyeshadow, but not bright enough to mask the redness in her cheeks. Her fingers trembled slightly against the edge of the sink. Around her, the muffled echoes of laughter from the previous toast still rang in her head like distant thunder. Michael's smug voice replayed on a loop, slicing sharper than she anticipated. Here's to Amanda. Proof that even dreams without profits can be endearing. She had always known she was cast as the other sibling, the artsy dreamer in a family that valued stock portfolios over skyline silhouettes. But tonight, seated beside distant cousins and near the kitchen doors, hearing her work reduced to a punchline publicly, something shifted deep inside her. She took a deep breath. In, hold. Then out. It steadied her. No tears would fall tonight. Not out of shame. Not here. In that moment, Amanda wasn't just remembering the structure she designed or the tight budget she'd stretched into masterpieces. She was remembering the community parks built for underfunded schools, the neighborhood libraries now crowned with natural light. She remembered why she chose this path in the first place, not for applause, but for impact. And yet, maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop apologizing for her success simply because it didn't come wrapped in Wall Street bonuses or cocktail party accolades. Amanda dabbed her lipstick, stood taller, and let her shoulders fall back. You are not less, she whispered to herself, voice low and steady. Not because of money. Not because of mockery. Especially not because others failed to see the value of her purpose. With quiet conviction settling in like steel beneath velvet, she stepped back into the ballroom, not for her brother, not for image, but for herself. Ready to meet the night as the woman she truly was. Unshaken, unbothered, and unforgettable, Amanda smoothed the silk of her emerald bridesmaid dress, handpicked by Stephanie, paid for in full by Michael with a smug remark. Well, some things still need a family subsidy, huh? She had smiled at the time, letting the insult slide like water over polished stone. But every little jab had chipped away at her calm, until the toast shattered it. Back at the ballroom, the laughter from Michael's words still echoed faintly in Amanda's ears. She held her glass with steady hands, but her heart buzzed with unease. For a moment, she considered taking a cab home, shedding the weight of the evening like the heels already biting into her feet. But something held her in place, a quiet defiance. Not tonight. As she approached the bar, a silver-haired man in a tailored navy tux looked her way. His eyes sparkled with recognition. You're Amanda Russell, aren't you? He asked, stepping closer. She blinked. Yes, he extended his hand. James Wilson, CEO of Wellington Financial. And lately, your fan. You're the reason we now have the most visionary corporate headquarters in North America. Amanda's breath caught. James laughed gently, sensing her surprise. Your firm's proposal, your design, was the only one that made us pause, feel something. You've redefined what a financial institution can stand for. I've been wanting to meet you in person. Around them, conversations continued, but Amanda's world tilted. Within minutes, James had ushered her to a front table, seated her beside Wellington's coup, and raised his glass in her honor. A sea of suited executives turned toward her with admiration. Across the room, Amanda noticed Michael, mid-conversation, and then frozen. Mouth slightly open. His eyes locked on Amanda and the rising regard surrounding her. He had mocked her with a toast. But it was her work that brought the room to its feet. Sometimes the most powerful people aren't on stage. They're building it. Amanda smoothed her dress as she stepped back into the ballroom. The lights glittered overhead like stars, too elegant a setting for the emotional storm swimming beneath her ribs. She was composed now, not because the sting of her brother's toast had faded, but because she had decided this moment would not undo her. She made her way toward the bar, just wanting a quiet drink when a commanding but warm voice called out behind her. Excuse me, are you Amanda Russell? She turned to see a tall, impeccably dressed man approaching with gleaming eyes and an outstretched hand. Yes, she answered, a little cautiously. I'm James Wilson, CEO of Wellington Financial, he said with a slow smile. I was hoping I'd get a chance to meet you tonight. Amanda blinked. You know who I am? Of course, you're the visionary behind Wellington's new headquarters. Your design outshone every other proposal on the table. When Hayes and Martin presented the renderings, let's just say jaws dropped. Mine included. Amanda's breath caught for a moment, but she said nothing, the weight of understanding slowly settling in. From the corner of her eye, she caught Michael turning toward them, eyebrows knitting as he noticed the interaction. "This is such an honor," James continued. "I had no idea there was a family connection here." "Michael never mentioned you were the Amanda Russell." Her smile barely wavered. "He must have forgotten." James gave a chuckle, oblivious to the subtext. "Come, some of my colleagues would be thrilled to meet you." Within minutes, Amanda was drawn into a new orbit, seated beside executives, answering thoughtful questions about green infrastructure, urban renewal, and adaptive reuse. Heads turned across the ballroom. Some whispered. Michael stood frozen at his table, glass in hand, the color slowly draining from his face. James Wilson's voice cut clean through the buzz of the ballroom chatter. "To Amanda Russell," he announced, lifting his champagne flute high. "The visionary behind the new face of Wellington Financial. We couldn't be more honored to partner with someone of your caliber." There was a pause, then warm, genuine applause rolled through the room. A few executives rose to their feet. Stephanie blinked, confused. Amanda's parents exchanged astonished glances, Robert's hand frozen mid-bite. And Michael sat at the top table, motionless, jaw tight but confused because for the first time that evening, he was in the center of attention. Amanda's cheeks flushed, but not from embarrassment. This was something else, deep recognition. She smiled softly, nodded in thanks, and raised her glass in return. Not gloating, not smug, just grounded in purpose, in her place. The Wellington executives leaned in closer. Questions came her way like fireflies. What inspired the atrium design? How did you navigate zoning restrictions on the East River site? Do you teach? Speak at conferences? Amanda answered everyone with poise and insight, her passion lighting up the table like candlelight. Michael tried to pretend he wasn't watching, but of course he was. Each laugh and nod Amanda received hit him like a quiet thunder. For once, his meticulously calculated career had nothing on his sister's creative force. The shift was palpable. The girl dismissed as merely artistic no longer needed praise from anyone, especially not him. Later, Amanda found herself face to face with Michael. He opened his mouth to speak, reaching for that familiar smirk, but there was hesitation. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked. "I didn't need to," Amanda replied gently. "I just needed to know for myself." And with that, the evening wrote itself into their family history, etched not by Michael's toast, but by the respect Amanda earned without ever demanding it. Amanda hadn't expected to see her brother again so soon after the night unfolded like a slow, swirling revelation. She thought she might slip away after dinner, thank James Wilson and his team politely, then vanish before dessert. But fate, and perhaps something poetic, had other plans. Michael approached her near the balcony outside the ballroom. The city skyline twinkled behind him, a glittering mirror to the discord in his eyes. He looked uncertain, hands shoved into his perfectly tailored pockets, no longer the picture of untouchable status he had been hours earlier. "Amanda," he began, hesitant. "Can we talk?" She straightened, her shoulders pulled back, not in defiance, but in certainty. "Of course," she replied, her tone calm but firm. He glanced toward the ballroom, then back. "I didn't know about the project or your firm. If I had, you would have respected me," she said quietly. "Or at least not humiliated me in front of 300 people?" Michael winced. "I didn't mean it the way it came out. You know I joke." "No," she cut in gently. "You belittle. There's a difference." The air lay still between them, filled with the weight of everything they never said. Amanda took a breath. "You've spent years defining success for the entire family. I needed you to see me with or without a winning headline." He nodded slowly. "I see you now." She offered a small, bittersweet smile. "I didn't do this to make you look bad," she said. "I just stopped making myself look small." Michael's reply was a quiet, sincere, "I'm sorry." And for the first time, she believed he meant it. They stood in that space, neither adversaries nor fully healed siblings, but perhaps, finally, equals. Amanda arrived early to the office that Monday morning, sunlight casting long golden shadows against the concrete walls of Hayes and Martin. The morning air carried a hum of quiet anticipation, but she didn't yet know the full weight of what was about to unfold. As she set her coffee down, her phone lit up with a flood of notifications. Texts, mentions, emails. With a quick swipe, she opened the first message, an alert from Archifuture magazine. Hayes and Martin officially announced as lead architects on Wellington Financial's global HQ. Time stilled. Amanda's breath caught, not in surprise, but in the unexpected speed of the public release. Her name was featured in every major architecture blog and business news outlet. Headlines celebrated her as a rising force in sustainable design, credited with a bold vision that had outshined global competitors. As she stepped into the firm's shared workspace, her team erupted into applause. Marla, the firm's co-founder, gave her a grin and whispered, "You built this, Amanda. This moment? It's yours." Later that morning, an email from Michael pinged her inbox. Short, hesitant. "Congrats on the Wellington HQ. Would love to see some of your work in person sometime." She stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she smiled, not out of vindication, but from the calm satisfaction of being seen for who she truly was. By that afternoon, her parents left voicemails telling her how proud they were. Linda even mentioned making plans to attend her upcoming lecture at NYU. For the first time in a long time, Amanda felt something shift, not just in how they saw her, but in how she saw herself. She didn't need their validation anymore. But it was nice to finally have IT that Amanda sat quietly at the edge of the terrace, the soft hum of the city behind her, the clinking of champagne flutes floating out from the ballroom. Her conversation with Michael an hour earlier still pulsed in her, thou. GHTS, measured, honest, and finally, unfiltered. For so many years, she tiptoed around their dynamic, afraid that standing fully in her truth might shatter the fragile threads of connection that bound them. But now, something had shifted. Michael's reaction had surprised her, not defensiveness, but a flicker of true humility. He had listened. Really listened. When Amanda spoke about the years of quiet struggle, the loneliness of being misunderstood even in her own home, and how she had clung to the belief that purpose was more valuable than profit, Michael hadn't scoffed. He had looked down, hands clasped, and said, "I didn't know. I never bothered to ask, did I?" That moment didn't undo the hurt, but it laid the first plank in what Amanda hoped could become a stronger bridge between them. Not one built on shared expectations, but mutual respect. In the days that followed, Michael reached out, not for show, but earnestly. He asked thoughtful questions, requested reading material about sustainable architecture, even tagged Amanda in a LinkedIn post celebrating the Wellington Commission. Their texts shifted from rare and clipped to semi-regular and occasionally warm. Amanda didn't pretend everything was fine, but she allowed space for growth. Their parents, too, had changed. At Amanda's next public lecture, they sat in the second row, wide-eyed and unexpectedly proud. Her mother even beamed with a tearful smile afterward, whispering, "We didn't get it before. But we're starting to." The sibling story hadn't ended. It was simply under renovation, messy, imperfect, but finally worth rebuilding. Amanda sat at the edge of the long banquet table, her champagne flute untouched as the ballroom shimmered with applause in her name. It wasn't the kind of moment she'd ever imagined having at her brother's wedding or at any family function, really. And yet, there she was, the spotlight not just warming her skin, but thawing 10 years of quiet disappointment. James Wilson's words still rang in the air. To Amanda Russell, the visionary behind Wellington's new future. And just like that, the room that once tolerated her presence now leaned in, hungry for her voice, her ideas, her designs. The same guest who had laughed politely at Michael's jab now looked uneasily his way, then back to Amanda with newly awakened interest. Even as the room sparkled with delicate music and clinking glasses, Amanda remained composed. She smiled when appropriate, nodded graciously, and answered questions about sustainability and urban revitalization like she did at any conference or city council meeting. Only this time, the room wasn't filled with architects or activists, it was her family's world. And for the first time, she wasn't the footnote. She was the feature. Her parents approached later with tentative smiles. Her father even muttered, "Impressive work, sweetheart," like it pained him to say it, but felt right, nevertheless. Her mother said she hadn't realized how big a deal the project was. Amanda simply nodded. She didn't speak to impress, she'd already done that with her actions. Michael, red-faced and awkward, tried to joke. Guess I didn't get the full memo, huh? Amanda looked him in the eye, not cold, but clear. You didn't ask. There was no cruelty in her tone, just clarity. A final word, not a final blow. And in that moment, she realized the truest win wasn't applause or recognition. It was never needing their laughter to feel whole again.